Welcome everyone to our discussion of the paths leading up to the center of the tree for our future path working. And tonight we're going to talk about these paths and give you some keywords and associations so that you kind of get the feeling of where we're going and what to expect. Because if you have some associations already, then the guided visualizations that we're going to do in the next few weeks will be so much more powerful because you'll already be attuned. So Lana has created this amazing spreadsheet for us. See if I can. Okay, yeah, I can get to it and I'll share it. I will share it so that we can look at it real quick. And this is linked. We'll put the link. The link is already on the um, it's already on the Facebook, but we'll make sure it's like pinned. And so this is a list of attributions. See, so when you're designing these tarot cards and when you're trying to figure out what they mean, there's a cluster of meanings cluster of ideas that sort of point towards the meaning of the card. Just as like archetypes, like you have point at something ineffable, all these attributions point at this meaning of the card that's really hard to put into words, but easy to understand if you look at these things going around it. So we have temperance as the next path, and then let me pull up. Okay, so the path is connecting Yesod here, dreams, up to Tipareth. It's the very heart of the tree. The Tipareth is the first time that you're passing through the veil of Parakath, and you're going from very high level of functionality and a normal kind of consciousness to a more spiritual consciousness. You're moving your awareness from mundane aspects to a more spiritual perspective of your holy guardian angel, your divine genius, your nous, um, your divine daemon, your advisor that lives in Tipareth in the very center of the tree. And so we move up that way, going up Tipareth, going the first with the path of temperance. And then we'll do the two side paths. And the reason for this is temperance is a very balancing, and the two side paths are going to be a little more challenging, but very interesting. So for the path of Samak, which is temperance, some of the things that go with it, they point you in the direction of the meaning. Sefer Yetzirah, the mysterious book, we're not really sure who wrote it or even when. Intelligence of probation, which makes sense because you're right on the threshold. You're right on the threshold, right at a very lentil sort of experience, very liminal. The tarot card, of course, is temperance, which is full of symbolism of alchemy and mixing things in the right balance, having things in the right harmony, transformation through the right skillful action on yourself. Because if you're on this path, if you're here, you're somebody who's working on their own personal transformation. And you're doing it skillfully with the right ingredients and the right path. The Hebrew letter, because there's a letter, is Samek, which is sort of a closed loop letter. Sometimes people liken it to a wedding ring, but it's a loop. And it literally means, so the Hebrew letters all have literal meanings. They translate as words. It means a prop or a support or something that's helping hold things up, like the tent pole, for instance. You also look at it as an axis mundi because it's going straight up the tree. The archangels are Raphael, who's in Yesod, and Raphael, who's in Tipareth. It's a simple card. It's a simple letter. So it relates to Sagittarius, the archer, firing his arrow up the tree. The body points would be the hips and thighs. The color would be yellow. The animal would be a centaur horse, hippogriff, or a dog. A hippogriff is kind of a combination of an eagle. No, maybe it's a horse and a lion, but it's got wings. The plants are rush. The gem is hyacinth. Perfume is heliotrope and olivandum, which is a wonderful smell. The magical weapon is the arrow, which Sagittarius fires straight up the tree, which is the path you want to go. And the affirmation is, I will overcome all adversaries. And this listing is on our page. So we'll stop share for a minute, but I'll pull that up back up. So the path of temperance, going straight up the middle of the tree, is going to be one where we're reaffirming things like balance and harmony, and we're going through a transformation, an alchemical process where we're going from a normal, a very high functioning world consciousness, like somebody who, the level of consciousness would be like, I don't know, like a doctor or a lawyer, or a banker, somebody who's very high functioning intellectually, but still focused on the material world, to the beginnings of shifting the consciousness to the higher self and looking forward down at the material world from that perspective and seeing the big picture being more cosmic, right? As above, so below, right? Highly functioning material world consciousness to beginning functioning spiritual consciousness. That's the shift that we'll see. So when you see that card temperance in a reading, they're always very mysterious, but it means like good things. Good things are happening, change in a positive way, working well with others, harmony, growth, those types of things. But I think actually traveling the path is going to give us a lot more understanding of the meaning. It'll become a lot more personal when we do the guided visualization. So that's what to look forward to there of the temperance. Now, I also like to relate the meaning of the tarot card to the hero's journey, right? And so there are 22 paths, 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and 22 stages of the hero's journey. And we can look at the major arcana as life's initiations. It makes sense to tap into Joseph Campbell, who is utterly amazing, to get some insight into what the meaning of this card is. Now, the hero cycle, we know, has a departure stage where the hero, which is you, because you're going pathworking, so you're going on a hero's journey. Departure, like that's when we do things like create a sacred space where you're a ritual departure. And then you go into the adventure, which is the trials of initiation. It's the second stage where you're transformed by it. The third stage is a cosmogonic cycle where you learn about the creation of the universe and your place in it. And then the fourth phase is the path of return, where the hero has to come back to the world with the boon. And temperance, the stage of the hero's journey that is temperance, is called the reoccurrence of the boon. And what this means is, if you think about the hero goes through the underworld, gets transformed, gains some insight, this boon, brings it back to the world. The boon has to be then translated from something that's personal to something that's universal, so that everyone can benefit from this insight, from this boon. Like the hero comes back and they do a great artwork, they write a song, they write a poetry, they do art, they create statues, something, write a book, go around and teach people. There's some way that they express that boon to the world. And so that's something to also consider when the card comes up in a reading, if it's something like that that needs to happen. And I imagine something like that will happen along with the guided visualizations. So that is temperance. And that will be the first guided visualization that we do. So the next one, go back to here. The 26th path of Ion. Now, Ion is a very interesting. It connects. Let's see, can I bring it back up? Yes. Ion connects Hod, which is the intellect, the thinky part, rational reason, to the higher self in Tipareth. That's Ion. So that will be the one we do after the balancing. After we fortify ourselves with Samak, we'll ready to face Ion. And Ion is the devil card. Wait, I just had these earlier. Which is not a card that people look forward to seeing. Because they probably feel like this is being about, sort of critical, judgmental. Right? This, like when this comes up, you're maybe being advised, hey, you're being too materialistic. You're being bound to things. That's the kind of reading, this kind of thing that comes up in a reading. But it's infinitely more complicated than that because it's the intellect connecting to the higher self. And what's bound up in this idea is that reaction, for one, right? Our reaction to material devil. These people like have like grapes and stuff, representing drinking, material things. The letter Ion literally means eyes. So like our eyes sort of draw us to things. So that is like the whole ball, like kind of wound up on this card. But really, we don't have to look at things in a way that's judgmental, right? If we step back and we look at the judgmental energies that come up when we pull this card, when this card comes up for us for the day, that's almost more telling than the imagery on the card itself. So let's look at some of these attributions and then we'll talk about the card a little bit more. Okay. Okay. So the 26th path of Ion, the sephiroth Zira talks about it being the renewing intelligence, Tipareth the Hod, probably because it's sort of continuously regenerating like the way our thoughts do. The tarot card is the devil, which we just looked at. The Hebrew letter Ayin, which means eye, how we perceive things, how we're judging things, we're looking at things. The archangels are Michael and Hod and Raphael and Tipareth. And it's a simple card which relates to Capricorn, which is why you get all this goat imagery on the card, right? Capricorn, cardinal earth, very earthy energy, right? Winter solstice, wintertime energy going down into the earth, very powerful. Relates to the sex organs as a body point. Color would be black and indigo. Animals would be goat and ass. Ass probably because donkeys really get a bad rap. They held up all the time as like some kind of like bad guy, even though they're very powerful animals. They're very strong. So they're forced to do a lot of really hard work. So then they're called stubborn, right? Go pull this ton of coal ore up the hill. Oh, you don't want to do it? You're stubborn, right? And the goats are very fertile animals. There's a lot of fertility in this card. The plants are the hemp, thistle, absinthe, and rue. Well, that's cool. So plants that can both cleanse and alter the consciousness. The gems is the black diamond. And the perfume is none on the first working. And then when you repeat it, because you're meant to do this over and over again, cinnamon and musk. So something spicy and something musky. And the magical weapon is the lamp, presumably to help us steer away on this card. And the affirmation is, I will distinguish between truth and illusion. Distinguishing between truth and illusion. Okay, so what more can we also know about this card? There's a lot of very earthy, fertility, connection, renewing. There's a lot of fecundity and energy tied up in this card. It relates to Capricorn. Crowley's card is extremely phallic. It's just massively phallic card. It's the most phallic card in his deck, which is saying something for a Crowley deck. So we might also consider how we may be needing to look at how we view the material world and physical pleasures and things. Do we see those things as taboo, or do we see them as sacred? And if we, whatever choice we make, why, right? Is drinking and having pleasure a taboo thing that you shouldn't do? Or is it something that you do in celebration of the goodness of the material world? And those all the choices in between. And so when the devil card comes up in a reading, a lot of things to consider. Where are you in your relationship to the material world? The intellect connecting to the higher self. Where are we in that? Are we making a lot of judgments and thoughts? Are we relying on past information? Are we relying on our own experience? Now, Joseph Campbell, his stage is the part two, where the hero is undergoing their initiations. This is the part of the story where your hero is hasn't quite conquered things yet, but is learning what they need to know in order to be successful on their journey. They're beginning the deeper initiations. And this one's called Atonement with the Father. Right? Establishment of inner values. There's a part in the hero's journey where they're prepared for their adventure by a teacher. And then they go off on the adventure and they found out that what they taught only can take them so far. And they have to go after their own learning. So once the seeker has abandoned the normally accepted social values and renounced the self-limitation and denial, then the seeker must abandon the old personal identity itself, with all the associated habits and superstitions. Therefore, the seeker experiences a lifting of guilt, of self-judgment, and reestablishes a connection with the deity that is more relevant to the true nature of the inner self than what he or she previously held. The abandonment of the old self-image is very difficult. We're bound by our petty ego and ingrained habits and sustaining self-defense mechanisms. You see the devil card is all caught up in kind of like glue. It's like holding you where you're at because you're making these judgments, right? Instead of like realizing, well, how much of my reaction to this is testament that teachings that I've received from society that are probably good as a general set of ideas and rules, but they don't come from in here. So this is a very initiatory path. Basically, the ego dies a second time, and then you're rebirthed as a new spiritual identity as you pass from the intellect to the higher self. So it's very initiatory, where you let go of what you've been taught up until this point, because you're crossing that veil of Paracath, and you're going to the higher spiritual levels. So there's a lot to unpack, and I'm pretty sure when we do the guided visualization for the path of the devil, that we'll go over a lot of these ideas, that they'll all be wrapped up in that guided visualization. So when this comes up in a reading, there's a lot to look at. Like, what are our values? Are they coming from our inner self, or are they coming from what we've been handed to us? How are we judging ourselves and our process? Are we looking at it from a more spiritual perspective, or from what we've been handed growing up? And there's also the consideration, am I being a little too caught up in my material pleasures? Something to always look at when you get the devil card in a reading. So this will be the second guided visualization after we get centered, and temperance. Will we face this? Because this is a pretty deep initiation. When tarot symbolism and magical symbolism, when you have something to come up with an image that's challenging, it's meant to be something very serious, very high level of initiation. Because when people first enter a spiritual path, you want them to get their bearings, to feel comfortable. So you give them some challenging experiences, but nothing too hard. So you can get your feet like, oh, this is how all this works. This is how inner work works. This is what shadow work is. This is how I have an experience of my inner world. And once you've been around for a while, then you're ready to face images that's a lot more challenging because you're ready for it. You're like, oh, when this comes up, I'm going to kind of look at more challenging issues, more shadow elements that I put on the shelf for now. But this is a very powerful, very sacred card. It's very important in the Crowley deck because he's very much into the beauty and spirituality of the material world itself. But I'm sure we'll have more experience with the devil and Ian as we go forward. So then the card after that is everyone's second favorite card, the death card. We've already managed to explore the tower and have that adventure. But then, this is the death card. This is on the tree. I'll share the screen, bring it up the image again. Okay. So the devil connects the emotional world with the higher self. I mean, sorry, the death card, the emotional world with the higher self. Whereas the devil connected the intellect to the higher self. This runs from Nisak to the higher self, crossing the veil of Parakath. And Nisak is, I just say the emotional world because it contains all the non-rational, not irrational, but intuitive feeling sorts of ideas and thoughts and inspirations. Whereas Hode is the rational, where we're thinking with thoughts in our head, with ideas, and we're doing steps 1, 2, 3, 4. Netsock is boom, fully realized idea, just pops in, or strong feelings. And so this card, the death card, connects those strong feelings to the higher self. So again, we're looking at another very deep, powerful transformation, initiation. Okay, so the 24th path of Noon, the letter Noon in Hebrew, the imaginative intelligence, imaginative imagination would be part of Nitzach, connecting us to our higher self. The tarot card is the death card, which we were just talking about. The letter Noon, which is associated with the card and the path, directly means fish. So it's something that we're fishing for, something of value that we're trying to obtain from deep in the waters of the subconscious. And Zadi, the fish hook, we've already passed. So we should be ready for this. The archangel's Hanael, which goes with Netzach, and Raphael is at Tipareth. This is another simple letter, so it goes with the sign of Scorpio. So that's fixed water, Another water symbol, fish. There's a lot of water in this card. And the planets Mars and Pluto. The body part is the intestines, again, watery part, digestion, assimilation. Color is dark brown. The animals are creepy crawlies, scorpion, beetle, lobster, crayfish, and the wolf. Most of these animals are simple carapace type animals, some living in the water. Wolf is just a bit sort of a dangerous. Um, Plants are deadly anemones and cactus. Cactus, I would imagine, being that it's a very sterile kind of plant. Gem is snakestone. Perfume, nothing on the first working, and then rose, which kind of makes sense. I can see rose and going along with skeletons and such. The magical weapon is the pain of obligation, which I imagine is part of the experience of initiation. And the affirmation is change brings growth. So we have a lot of ideas of change, of water, things that live in the water, deep in the subconscious. We're dealing with a very intuitive connection to the higher self, whereas code, we can think about it in words and work it out. Here we have to sort of feel our way through it. So when we see the death card up in the reading, we're like, oh, it doesn't really mean a physical death. What it means is a transformation. Old things dying that are useless to give way for new things to take its place. And that's generally accepted meaning. Very dramatic though. Have the usually the cards are very the skeleton or something, and pieces down here, people of change, which ties very well into. I'm going to talk about the Joseph Campbell aspect because I really think that these sort of tie in a lot of these ideas together. So we were talking before, we have the departure, the initiation, the cosmogonic cycle, and then the return. Now, cosmogonic cycle, uh, that is a little bit weird, a little bit harder. Um, Basically, it's dealing with the creation of the universe, and it goes in several steps. The first step is the universe, which is cosmic background, the thing that exists between universes, the great void that everything emerges from, the world navel, and that's the universe card. Then we get the emanations from the void, the universe emanating out from that darkness, from that chaos, right? And that's Zadi, the star, the universe emanating out by some means. And then we get the golden age, the virgin birth of the creative role of women in the mythical golden age, the empress. And so when you look at creation stories worldwide, they tend, not exactly, but they tend to follow this pattern where there's some primal chaos of some sort. The universe emanates out of that, by some means, some deity, something happens, it disturbs the void, and it gives forth this emanation that creates the universe. And then we're given this golden age. We're all living in Eden, it's the first deities, this is perfect time, right? And so there's this golden age that happens, and everything's great, but things are static, right? If it's a golden age, then nothing changes. They'll say, oh, the mystical golden age that lasted a million years, or some great length of time, and in this time everyone was happy, everyone had what they needed, but nothing really changes. So the golden age is followed by transformation, the age of death and suffering, which is the death card. So in these stories, something happens that breaks that golden age. They're kicked out of the garden. Some important deity dies and is cast to the underworld and has to be brought back. Something shatters the symmetry of the golden age. But once that happens, the new thing that's entered into the universe, and that new thing is change. That things can evolve and change over time. Yeah, we have to deal with war, death, pestilence. We have to deal with challenging things that upset our apple cart and are difficult and are painful. But because of those things being as part of the universe can then start evolving. And that we can move forward and we can have these spiritual experiences and that we can learn from them. And so the death card, a lot of symbolism, change, evolution. Here, the initiation is going from the purely intuitive feeling world, imagination world of Nizak to the more spiritual world of Tipareth, which exists in a state of like pure being, pure knowingness. Right? So we're coming up the tree to the center, away from the world, away from the physical normal world, and into this more spiritual state of being. And when that happens, there are things that you have to let go of. Things you don't really need anyway. You know, the attachment to our own ideas about ourselves and our feelings and our emotions and our identity, all those things that we hold tight to. It's not that you have to give them up and never have them again, they're gone. It's just that your awareness shifts where you can look at them, you can look at them in your hand and say, oh yeah, that's me. I do these things. I'm like this. Right? Instead of it being here and you can't see it in front of you, you can see it. And so you have the option of continuing to be like this, that, and the other, or not. When that feeling comes up, that pattern comes up, and you can see it. You can, hey Marco, you can act on it or not. So the idea that all this, the past self, the higher self, lower self has to die, and blah blah blah. It's not like it dies like it's gone forever. You're not really losing anything. You're just gaining the perspective so you're not sort of owned by it. You're not sort of possessed by it, if that makes any sense. So these four paths that will be coming up in the next couple of months is first the path of temperance. So we'll be fortified with like really good balance. And then we'll go the intellect, because probably where most of us are really comfortable with, to Tipareth. And then we'll deal with the little bit more abstract, difficult, emotional, intuitive world to Tipareth. And then we'll do Tipareth itself. Hop down a little bit, buddy. I need to go play. So let's look at Tipareth real quick. Okay. So Tipareth is here in the very center of the tree. Right? It operates a very special place. And Tipareth, it relates to the sun. As the sun is the center of the solar system, Tipareth is the very center of the tree. And the planets all sort of revolve around it. We can see Zira sees it as a mediating intelligence. That makes sense because it's in the middle. So it's mediating, it's balancing, it's harmonizing all the other sephiroth that are around it. In the tarot, you'll have the sixes. Now, all the six cards are all like really nice cards. So like the Six of Wands, it's a very positive, friends, nostalgic card. Oh, wait a minute, that's Six of Cups. The Six of Wands is a very successful, getting what you want in a very positive way, kind of. The Six of Swords is a positive card. Things are moving in the right directions. And the Six of Pentacles is a card of material gain and harmony and balance. They're all, when you see the sixes come up in a tarot reading, it's good stuff. Uh, Hebrew letter associated with Vav would be the nail. Now, normally the Hebrew letters are associated with the past, but this is probably given here, probably because it's sort of like holding things down. It's a pivot point. Everything's rotating around. The archangel is Raphael, a very solar angel. Like I said, the cosmic attribute is the sun. The body point is the heart or the solar plexus. That makes sense. It's right in the center of the tree. And we do, like say, the middle pillar exercise. We vibrate the divine name, Yehovah Eloah Ve'Da'at, in the heart center. The color is yellow. The primary color, it's one of the last, it's the last primary color on the middle of the tree going down. The animal is the lion, the phoenix, and the child representing sort of the rebirth of the higher self. Phoenix, rebirth. Lions are very solar animals. Metal is gold. That makes sense because, in the sort of the colors and everything that we're looking at. The plants are the acacia, vines, bay leaf, gems, the topaz, and diamonds. Again, with the olivadnum, that's a really nice one. Magical weapon is the layman or the rosy cross. And the affirmation is balance is the key. So the rosy cross is a symbol that's behind me back here on the wall. Oops, I don't want that. When we get to the last guided visualization of the series, to the Tipareth, to the higher self, that will be really pretty amazing. Okay, so there you go. There's a rosy cross for you. Whoops. There's a rosy cross. That's I want to say it's a Golden Dawn symbol, but it might be a little bit older. It might also be a Rosicrucian symbol. You can see that it contains the four elements, yellow at the top for air, blue for water, red for fire, and then has color complements. So when you look at color complements, they play these little tricks with your eyes, like the red and the green. If you stare at it and then close your eyes, you'll see an inverse image. And so that's how that's worked. So this is a magical tool that you can use to visualize different letters and symbols and energies and such. You can see in the center, the white part, there's a hexagram, Jewish star, and that's representing the center of the tree. Let's see, can I zoom in on that? Okay. So there in the middle, you see that's the sun, that's Tipareth. Yesod is the moon down below. Netzach is the Venus. Makes sense, feeling. Hod over here is the Mercury sign, which is intellect. And then above it, we've got Gebura, which is Martian. Chesed, which is like Jupiter, very expansive and positive. And then above that, we've got Saturn, which is really Bina, but it kind of moves over and fits there. So that's the Tipareth, right in the center of the tree. Let's see, figure out how to work this. All right. So that is an overview of temperance, the devil card, the death card, and then Tipareth itself. So four guided visualizations. I know that, sorry, that's a lot of information, but we recorded this. We'll put it on the site. And I think Alana and I would both invite you to do research on these cards and these paths and see what you find. If you have your own decks, if you have your own favorite books, that you could look up these major arcana and the Tarot 6 cards to get some idea of what's in store for us, what's coming up. So with that, I think I'll end the recording and open it up to discussion.